Max Payne 3 is a game I haven't thought about in years. However, being a Rockstar game, I thought it would be worth revisiting 12 years after its release. And simply put, it's aged like a fine wine, if your only approach to drinking wine is to neck it as quickly as humanly possible. Confession time, I never played Max Payne 1 and 2, I've only ever played the third one, and I'd imagine that probably comes across as a bit of a sin. But I promise you, stick around to the end of the video, because it's going to sound so much worse. When we first got an Xbox 360 in this house, Max Payne 3 was one of the games that came with it, and it was certainly fun to a younger me, although I wasn't of an age where my brain had developed to a point to take it at more than just the face value senseless violence. But I enjoyed it anyway, because no matter which way you cut it, killing people is in a game, of course, I promise. But you get the point, I experienced and enjoyed this game in a vacuum. Another Max Payne series means nothing to me effectively. I still thoroughly enjoyed it and felt an urge to revisit it, even if I didn't realise it had just turned 12 years old a few days ago. Either way, it felt like something to do, and what other reason do I need? So let's revisit the magical happy world of Max Payne in Max Payne 3, 12 years later. In this game we play as Max Payne, your classic troubled American action hero. Troubled in the sense that his life is established to fundamentally suck. His wife and daughter are dead, so he drinks alcohol, smokes ciggies, and has a crippling painkiller addiction. However, if shit kicks off, which it often does when he's around, don't ask why, he becomes the most tenacious, unkillable cockroach man of all time. And that is excellent makeup for a game. Nice, tight, third-person shooter gameplay blended seamlessly with depression. The plot is quite set apart from the other two Max Payne titles, as it's set 9 years after the events of Max Payne 2. The game follows Max as a former NYPD detective turned private security contractor who's forced to leave behind his miserable existence in New York following what I like to call a mild disagreement with the locals, and now finds himself in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where if things went smoothly there wouldn't be a game about it. So while Max finds himself under the employ of Rodrigo Branco, disagreeable locals show up. But they didn't bank on the presence of Max Payne, or as I like to call him, Richard Ake, and this is where the plot begins to justify its gameplay. Tom Throbbing 3's gameplay is a simple beast, a third-person cover shooter with smooth movements and gameplay to match. You shoot people. What else do you want me to say? Where the gameplay sets itself apart is the fact that, due to Steve Anguish's extensive abuse of pain-killing substances, he can tap into the superpower of mixing codeine with Apple Tango. Therefore, when he dives, he can perceive time in slow motion and shoot people, creating for a much less flat and more dynamic shooter experience, with more creativity in the mix. In fact, this serves as an extension to a fairly common Rockstar gameism, bullet time, where you as the player can toggle a slow motion mode that allows you to reduce the risk of response when performing more risky attacks, for instance when cover is light or you simply can't be bothered utilising it. It isn't something that within itself stands out in Rockstar's catalogue of titles, but it is made somewhat refreshing by the notion of using it to dive around like an idiot.
I had no choice but to keep pushing forward.
You can also use it to throw yourself on the floor and stay there, both as a better angle for a perspective shot or simply for comedic effect. Hang on, I'll be with you in a minute. Excuse me.
You gonna take that contract on my head, bro? Excuse me if I ain't had enough guns pointed at me without you joining in. Aim at the bad guys, man.
Who do you work for? Now these painkillers do also serve a gameplay function, which is probably the first and only time substance abuse became a game mechanic. Harold Harm, when low on health, as indicated by the health bar that looks like his body, can smash some paracetamol and he's fine. Bullet hole through the chest, painkillers fix it. That's how it works. I don't make up the rules. The system is ever so slightly deeper than health and heal, however, as when you have painkillers in your inventory and get incredibly low on health, you can reflex shoot the last enemy to damage you and recover your health at the expense of one solitary painkiller and all of your bullet time. It's a neat system. Away from that, you also get a cool slow motion kill cam when you finish off the last enemy in your immediate vicinity. It's nice and you can, if you want, keep shooting for whatever good it does aside from waste unprecious ammunition. It's cinematic and cool, that's kind of it. It's also satisfying if you like watching a bullet dismantle somebody's face in slow motion. The gameplay does however falter in its progression sense, since mechanically it's fairly flat in the sense that you don't gain abilities as time goes on. All you have are the same shooting mechanics for the whole game and a range of weaponry to shake it up, and some set pieces here and there. It's tricky to outpace the gameplay outstaying its welcome in this format, but it's still consistently enjoyable because this gameplay holds up far better than a 12-year-old game has any right to. It's repetitive, enemy archetypes are not hugely varied, so the gameplay loop does go predictably. But it is fun, and that's what matters. Sure, you could boil it down to the same loop of Max Payne sad, bad men appear, Max Payne kill bad men, walk, more bad men spawn, do a cool dive face first into a brick wall, comically large gang of bad men murdered by Max Payne, bad men god, Max Payne sad again, rinse repeat for 14 chapters if you want, and you wouldn't necessarily be incorrect. However, you would be simplifying something to make it sound ridiculous, which can be done for more or less anything. I won't deny there are moments where Derek Damage 3 feels like a bit of a slog, but I observed it to be much more fluid in its simplicity than boring. And that's all it needs to be, smooth and satisfying, and it is. Other defining factors are the clear art style, and the storytelling that's occurring as you're moving through these linear spaces. These days I don't play enough linear games, so it is nice every now and then to just fire one up and play one simply because it has a nice, known, set start and end point. It also helps focus the purpose of the gameplay. There's nothing special about a linear game, but that environment in which there's no risk of bloat is nice at times. As for the art style, it's very complementary to the storytelling. It's best described as a series of jarring fades, pulses, transitions and TV effects, and its purpose is to convey the utterly painful state Max is in. And over the story we see him in various states of coherence, and that both plays into his vices being a downside and also helps convey the perspective of the main character, who narrates over the bulk of the game in a noir detective fashion. The linear world spaces also often lend themselves to environmental storytelling, little clues you can find along the way that you don't necessarily need to pick up, but they're there nonetheless. For instance, you can watch TV even though you're in the middle of a bit of a battle, or even play a piano.
It wasn't the time, and I was still a little rusty.
The levels are littered with nuggets of additional storytelling that enrich the story by allowing you to do more than simply shooting people or diving headfirst into things, and it really adds to the consistent narration you get from Max Payne as you go through the levels. So he's not just narrating over cutscenes and gunfights, he's also interacting with the world around him. It also allows a character who's a former detective to be observational, and is also an instance of attention to detail in the level design. Now, I did notice while playing Terrence Trauma 3 that the game doesn't put much value in backtracking. Once you enter a new room and shut the door, that door cannot be opened again, meaning any nuggets of information you might have missed up until that point, of which there are likely many, you can't find. It doesn't harm the game, but it does contradict rewarding players for being observational. That said, you're not really missing out on an awful lot of storytelling there, as even mid-chapter the game is fairly cutscene heavy. It's in these where we understand the problems that Max will inevitably shoot his way out of. Ooh, forklift. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Now, I wouldn't personally say Patrick Physically Not Okay 3's story is particularly riveting. It's a standard competent guns blazing action blockbuster in many ways. The plot devolves from Max being a simple bodyguard to a kidnap and rescue plot when he inevitably cocks that up. Something he also cocks up. And before long, Max is uncovering a conspiracy about harvesting organs, all the while spouting some cool one-liners, I guess.
Hey, are you lost?
In more ways than I could possibly explain.
Oh, Max, you know how to tickle the itch. It's a good, enjoyable, coherent story that can easily be followed, and encompasses a wide variety of locations, from penthouses to slums, and flashbacks to the less sunny, more traditional setting for the character. No two chapters feel the same with regards to how everything around you is composed, and though by the end of the story the gameplay does start to feel a bit same-ish, it's adequately justified by the story beats. It is, however, just justification for gameplay and doesn't become memorable enough to be remembered as more. But perhaps I'm being too harsh, as to me that's all it needed to be. The story is one of those aspects I've seen people both praise and criticise Max Payne 3 Online for. Having never played Max Payne 1 and 2, I can't compare this game's narrative to those games, nor can I compare gameplay for that matter, and I understand that reading the tapestry of opinions on this online doesn't qualify me for my own opinion, as I'm yet to dive into the ye olde Payne games for myself. But I do understand there is some disharmony between how this game's narrative is handled and how previous stories were told in the Max Payne series, and I'm sure I'll develop stronger opinions on that when I inevitably dive into the Remedy Entertainment titles. But for the time being, I couldn't possibly know where I stood on that, because my opinions are yet to be educated. On the visual front, Tony Tenderness 3 looks absolutely spectacular. I won't pretend that it by any means looks like it released yesterday, it doesn't. It does look like an older game, but it doesn't quite look 2012 old. It's aged incredibly well. And even though I find this following statement to depend on a false comparison, I want to say there are much newer titles that don't look anywhere near as good as this, but that's probably aided by its linearity. More detail gets put into what's up close because less needs to go in what's far away. There are moments where the game does look its age, but for the most part, I still think Max Payne 3 looks absolutely glorious. Another positive this game has in its favour is its terrific soundtrack. I have no musical knowledge whatsoever, so I'm just going to say it's good and move on. Become ungovernable. Walk down the up escalator. And with that, I've run out of things to say. So to conclude, I still really like Max Payne 3. It's a nice linear story that only took me about 8 hours to blast through, and I had good fun doing it. Is it a life-changing experience? No. But it scratches a nice action itch, even 12 years after its release. I'm sure I'll eventually get round to playing the first 2 games, and if you'd be interested in seeing that from me, please let me know. As for what you think about Dave Discomfort 3, please let me know in the comments section. Do you agree with what I've said, or do you mildly disagree? Do you have a modest tiff with what I have to say, or perhaps a reasonable melee of expression, a somewhat disgruntled dispute, a conflict of interest, a slight differing of opinion, an inappreciable disharmony of thought, an inkling of sparring of perspectives? Or do you just want to tell me to fuck off? The comment section is your friend. Please use it. And with that, I'm going to end the video here. It's unclear why there hasn't been another Max Payne game since Max Payne 3. Falling under Rockstar Games probably didn't help matters. The storytelling was also fairly well concluded, so perhaps that's it for Max Payne. I hear there could possibly be a Remedy Entertainment remake of Max Payne 1 and 2, and that would be nice. But I also learned in researching this video the actor who portrayed Max Payne, James McCaffrey, passed away at the end of 2023, and that is truly saddening. So there may never be a Max Payne 4, but I doubt there ever needed to be. Thank you all for watching this short video. I'll see you soon.